Part 2, we have already seen what is the problem of acidity, how it is influencing our crop management and soil management, including the microflora, beneficial microorganisms and harmful disease-causing organisms. Not only direct harmful effects by acidity, but also indirect effects also we have discussed. Then, of course, why the importance of organic matter addition, especially nitrogen management, is not possible without carbon management. So CN ratio is very important, we have discussed it, and mandatorily how much organic matter is to be added, or regularly we have to add organic matter. These things we have discussed. In this part, that is part 3, we are going to discuss the actual degree of deficiency, extent of deficiency of each essential element, starting from nitrogen to micronutrients, their fertility rating, classification according to the fertility status, then how to correct these deficiencies, and what do you mean by soil test based fertility management. All these things we are going to discuss in this part, that is part 3. Now coming to the status of fertility in Kerala, almost 65% of our soils are low to medium in available nitrogen, because organic carbon is also low to medium. Even in soil testing, you are not testing available nitrogen. Instead of that, you are testing organic carbon, because that is a better index of nitrogen status in the soil. So 65% of our soils are low to medium in available nitrogen. Almost 62% are high in available P, because you are dumping P fertilizers like Factum phos or diammonium phosphate, whatever it may be. What happens? This phosphorus is fixed in the soil, so phosphorus reserve is being increasing year after year. This has got another indirect effect, because when P is more, that will naturally induce zinc and boron deficiency, because zinc will be precipitated as zinc phosphate, which is not available. Boron absorption is prevented because of excess of phosphorus. More than that, if such a soil with high phosphorus is being eroded and coming to lakes like Vembanad or Kuttanad or brackish waters of Kerala, there will be algal bloom, or even you can see the enormous growth of aquatic weeds like Eichhornia or Salvinia or such other weeds. 70% of soils are low to medium in available K, because tropical soils, the dominant clay mineral is kaolinite, which has got a minimum cation exchange capacity and which cannot retain for potassium or calcium or magnesium. So 70% are low to medium in potassium. Since it cannot retain, unlike in the Indo-Gangetic alluvium where potassium fixation is there, if you want potassium to be efficiently used, the only possibility is you have to give split application. Whatever potassium apply at the time of requirement. Otherwise, the excess will be leached out during irrigation or rainfall. So also the case with calcium. When pH is very low, calcium deficiency is there, and it is identified that more than 40% of our soils are deficient in calcium. Magnesium deficiency is very severe, almost equal or more than that of potassium. So magnesium application is also essential. 47% are deficient to medium in sulfur, except in the acid sulfate soils. Kuttanad and Koal, they are all rich in sulfur. Pokali, all this because of the sulfate sources from the seawater. Otherwise, upland soils, especially laterites, are deficient in sulfur. Zinc deficiency was widespread maybe a decade back, but now application of zinc sulfate regularly reduced the zinc deficiency, and only say 12 to 15% of the soils are deficient in zinc. So also the case with the copper, since Kerala is dominated by plantation crops and prophylactic copper fungicide sprays take care of copper deficiency. So in tree crop areas, copper deficiency is very, very rare, except in some vegetables and of course in rice. And 60% of the soils are deficient in boron. So these are the conditions. Not even a single nutrient is to satisfactory level except that of iron and manganese, which are unfortunately to the toxic level. Deficiency symptoms, you cannot take it as a diagnosis, because once the deficiency is established, by that time plant must have suffered because of that deficiency. But it can be taken as an index. See, in the case of nitrogen deficiency, it starts from chlorotic or chlorosis of lower leaves, and it may spread to the entire plant. It may cause stunting, growth is affected, yield is affected. In the case of cabbage or cauliflower, you can see pinkish color of the leaves. Cowpea and all, you can see yellow color, especially the older leaves, because nitrogen is a mobile nutrient. This is another principle. N, phosphorus or potassium or magnesium, they are all mobile nutrients in plants, of course, of which phosphorus is highly mobile in soil, but it is highly mobile in plant. These nutrients will be remobilized from the older portions to the growing portions. So, first symptom will appear on the older or lower leaves, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium and magnesium. Whereas calcium is highly mobile and their symptoms, calcium and most of the metal micronutrients and boron, their deficiency will be on the younger portions. So nitrogen deficiency is chlorosis and yellowing starting from the older leaves. In the beginning only you can diagnose with the deficiency symptoms, because at severe cases every deficiency symptoms look similar, because yellowing and drying of leaves. This is a typical phosphorus deficiency symptom in maize, where the growth is stunted and the leaves will be starting with a purplish color on the margins, and that will spread to the entire leaf. Now coming to the potassium deficiency starts through the margins of the older leaves. Margins will be yellowish in color, and before spreading that yellow color, the margins will become necrotic and dry down. So this symptom will almost look like your bacterial leaf blight disease. And it is also observed that whenever there is potassium deficiency, chances of incidence of bacterial leaf blight is more. Now, coming to the fertility classification, this is related to soil testing. That is, just instead of giving blanket recommendation as per package of practice, it is always precise if you give based on soil testing. In Kerala, based on the NPK status, soils have been divided into 10 classes starting from 0 to 9. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 9. In other recommendations or ratings in national level or other states, it is only 3 classes, low, medium and high. Whereas in our state, based on Pakka research in 60s by some of the great soil scientists and teachers at that time, they classified the soil into 10 classes based on the NPK, and of the classes 0, 1, 2, 3 are low. In usual recommendation, if it is low, 125% of the recommended dose. Here, if it is a 0 class, it is 128. If it is first class, it is 117, then 106. That is fourth class, class number 3, 94%. This is the low. So low itself is subdivided into 4 classes with respect to NPK ratings. That too in the case of nitrogen. That's why I told it is related to organic carbon. Based on the texture also it is divided, sandy and loamy or clayey. You need not go for textural analysis and all. Just by feeling between the fingers, if it is gritty, you can classify it as sandy, and if it is sticking into your fingers, it may be clayey or loamy. 4, 5, 6 comes under medium fertility class, and finally 7, 8 and 9 comes under high. So you can note that even with the highest fertility class, number 9, you have to give at least 54% of nitrogen and 25% of P and K as a precaution. Because otherwise, after one crop, the entire soil will be mined of the nutrients and soil will become deficient. So in order to take care of that, a minimum dose should be recommended. So this type of things we can do only if you do soil testing. Now calcium deficiency, I already told. Coming to the secondary nutrients, calcium is highly mobile in plant. So the symptoms start from the tip or the growing portions or the younger leaves. So it starts drying or dying from the tip. That's why the calcium deficiency typical symptom is dieback, dying from the growing portions towards the older portion, that is dieback in calcium. Then calcium deficiency in banana. This is very common. You can see the youngest leaf fails to open and it starts drying from the tip. And in the case of dicots and all, branches are malformed multiple buds may come because whatever buds come out fails to open and grow. So there may be premature leaf fall, leaves are falling before maturity. These are all some of the calcium deficiency symptoms. A typical symptom in tomato, it is called blossom end rot. Now coming to magnesium deficiency, symptoms appear first on the lower leaves. It is similar to nitrogen, but the thing is, magnesium deficiency differs from nitrogen deficiency. Nitrogen deficiency starts at chlorosis of the entire leaf, starting from the tip and margin and spreading towards the inner side. Whereas magnesium deficiency, the chlorosis will be in between the veins and veinlets. So it is called intervenal chlorosis. In the case of rice itself, there will be alternate yellow streaks between the veins. So veins will be green and in between veins, laminar portions will be yellow. This is what is typical intervenal chlorosis. In banana, deficiency is slightly different. Leaves will be small and bunches will be small. Now, typical deficiency of magnesium in tomato, that is intervenal chlorosis. Veins are green and the laminar portion is yellow. Typical intervenal chlorosis. I told more than almost 70% of soils are deficient in magnesium. Magnesium sulfate is given, so you can forget about sulfur deficiency also. Coming to secondary nutrients, there is no classification like that of major NPK. Here, the critical level is taken as 300 ppm, 300 milligram per kg soil, available calcium. So if it is less than that, it is considered as deficient, and if it is 300 or more, it is considered as sufficiency. And usually calcium is recommended based on the pH and lime requirement. I have already told delta pH into 0.33. That formula you can think of, or you can use that table depending on the pH. Calcium can be given, so you can forget about calcium deficiency. You need not go for further critical level to be analyzed. Whereas magnesium, available magnesium status, if it is less than 120 ppm, 120 milligram per kg of soil, you have to apply at least 80 kg magnesium sulfate per hectare. So the quantity thing, in most of the crops, it may come as high as that of potassium. Sulfur, except in oilseed crops, if it is less than 5 ppm, you can consider as deficient. If it is less than 10 in oilseed crops, it can be considered as deficient. In both the cases, either you can give elemental sulfur, or in most of the cases, magnesium sulfate is mandatory now, because magnesium deficiency is widespread throughout Kerala. So when you are applying magnesium sulfate, you can forget about magnesium deficiency. So zinc deficiency, most common in rice. Rectangular patch is just like a straw, or sometimes it may be just like coppery brown in color in patches, maybe circular patches or rectangular patches. You can identify from long distance itself. And if you come close, you can see there is no tillering, and on the leaves you will be brown spots and plants will be stunted. This is the typical zinc deficiency symptom in rice, which is called Kera disease in rice. You can see on the left hand side, it is a zinc deficient field where maize is grown. For one plant, zinc is being supplied. The other plant, it is not. So see the difference because of zinc deficiency. Right hand side, it is zinc deficiency of tomato. In zinc deficiency, usually the typical symptom, as I told in the case of calcium, it is dieback. Here what happens is internodal length is reduced. So from a distance you can feel that all the leaves are coming from a single point. Such an appearance is called a rosette appearance, and the leaf size will be reduced, as you see in the case of rubber. So these two are the typical symptoms of zinc deficiency, little leaf and rosette. Rosette appearance because of shortening of internodes, and leaves are abnormally small and abnormal shape also. In the case of zinc, the recommendation depend on pH of the soil. If it is acidic soil, if the available zinc is less than 1, you have to supply zinc. Here the recommendation is given as 20 kg zinc sulfate per hectare. If it is alkaline soil, the available zinc is less than 0.6, it is deficient. There also recommendation is 20 kg per zinc sulfate. But here I want to stress one point, that in the case of micronutrients, also secondary nutrients also, if it is required, that is if deficiency is assured, then only you have to give don't give it as a blanket application as in the case of NPK, because most of these micronutrients like zinc, then of course iron, manganese, copper, these are all heavy metals. So you are loading the soil with heavy metals. So as and when it is required, you apply, one thing. Second thing is, rather than going for soil application, better to go for foliar application. Zinc sulfate can be used in the case of zinc. Copper sulfate can be used as in the case of copper fungicides in plantation crops. Of course, iron and manganese usually will not be a problem in our soil. And when foliar application is given, avoid toxicity due to free metal ions like zinc or copper, especially in rice. Copper can cause foliar injury. So in that case, you have to add a lime also and make it sure that the spray solution is almost neutral. Micronutrients are required in very small quantities. Suppose 1 lakh million atoms of nitrogen is needed by a plant, just 1 atom of boron or molybdenum is required. Say for example, in the case of coconut, just by 50 gram of borax, you can solve the problem of boron deficiency. This is a typical symptom of coconut boron deficiency, or even mature palms. Leaflets fail to separate and younger bud fails to open. Usually, boron deficiency and calcium deficiency, especially in banana, arecanut and all, it may come together because boron has got a role in translocation of not only metabolites but also many of the elements. So if boron deficiency is there, especially an immobile element like calcium, mobility is restricted. So boron induced calcium deficiency is very common. So this is a typical symptom of boron deficiency in arecanut, boron deficiency in rubber and banana. Calcium deficiency symptom is almost similar. So to assure both are supplied, what you can do is lime can be applied at the root zone and boron can be applied as a foliar spray, especially Solubor or such other soluble boron fertilizers are available. And critical level of boron is considered as 0.5 ppm. Less than 0.5, you can apply or spray 0.5% solution of borax in bigger crops. In vegetables and all, let it be between 0.2 to 0.4%. And in the case of coconut and all, plantation crops, what you will do if boron deficiency is there, practically it is not easy to spray foliar spray. So in that case, you can go for placement of boron fertilizer by making holes in the basin and identify some of the active roots and apply to that in small quantities, say 50 gram, maybe 5 holes, 10 gram each, or 5 gram in 10 holes. That will be enough. No need of applying 50 gram as a broadcast as in the case of NPK fertilizers or lime. In the case of copper, I told percentage of deficiency is very low. If at all you see like less than 1 ppm or less than 0.12 ppm in alkaline soil, don't go for copper sulfate soil application. Better to go for foliar spray. But in that case, better to go for mixing it with lime and assure that there is no free copper or acidity in the solution. And to sum up, you have to take some strategies in fertility management. I told phosphorus is very high in many of the soils. So what you can do, just by modifying the pH itself, you can make the unavailable phosphorus into available phosphorus. That means in an acid soil, if the pH is 4.5, there may be lot of iron and aluminium phosphate. When the pH is raised, so phosphorus will be released and H2PO4 ion will be available, which will be absorbed. So just by applying lime under moist condition, you can modify phosphorus deficiency or phosphorus availability. So in such cases where high phosphorus is there even for 2 or 3 seasons or even 2 years, you can skip or reduce the phosphorus or phosphatic fertilizers, and the cost of inputs of phosphatic fertilizers can be utilized for liming or micronutrient application. Second, as I have already told, secondary and micronutrient fertilizers may be applied only in the case of deficiency. But I repeat, in the case of liming and magnesium application, you need not even go for soil testing. Based on the pH, lime can be applied, and magnesium sulfate, even blanket application, will not do harm, say 80 kg per hectare or so. But only thing is, don't apply magnesium along with the potassium. Just take a week or so interval between the application of two. Even it is better to go for magnesium also as split application in the case of potassium. Then micronutrients, better to go for foliar application, and crop specific, location specific recommendations for secondary and micronutrients are already there in the package of practice. Only thing is, make soil testing a mandatory thing, and after that you can go for application as and when it is required. Now, of course, in the package you can see the recommendations by Kerala Agriculture University. For the time being, I am not going to that. You can go through the package based on agroecological units itself for rice, banana, vegetable cowpea, bitter gourd, snake gourd, etc. We have developed recommendations. Not only recommendations, the critical levels, the level beyond which you have to apply, both in soil and in plant, have been developed as a result of many experiments, especially in farmers' field, starting from Trivandrum to Kasaragod. Many locations, almost 300 plus trials we have done, and recommendations have been developed. But thing is, for secondary and micronutrients, assure that pH is measured, soil test is done, and in the case of soil test also, you have to remember the sample should be representative of the field for which you are going to give the recommendation, because you are taking just 1 gram or 5 gram or 10 gram and doing the analysis in the lab, and that value is extrapolated to the entire hectare or 2 hectare of lands. So, if your sampling is not representative, entire recommendation will become meaningless. So, sampling is very important, as well as the analytical accuracy as well as reproducibility is also very important. These are some of the recommendations for secondary and micronutrients for different crops in different agroecological units. Kerala Agriculture University have developed different micronutrient mixtures for foliar spray, the Sampurna. Sampurna contains all the micronutrients plus some of the secondary nutrients. It is recommended especially for rice, banana and vegetables. It is found from my practical experience, even this banana Sampurna is giving response to some of the crops like cardamom and pepper in Idukki. Now, to sum up, the sequential management technologies to be followed for sustainable fertility is, first, as I said, since Kerala is a slopey land, first you have to protect the surface soil by suitable soil conservation practices like mulching or agronomic or engineering practices and minimum tillage. Second, go for soil testing in a regular way, at least once in a year or before the crop starts, preferably in summer months, in all the crops, and know the status of different available nutrients and pH and salinity in our soil. Then first add lime in the form of calcium oxide or calcium carbonate or dolomite. When you add dolomite, assure the quality and assure that it contains magnesium. Moisture should be assured before applying any of these amendments or fertilizers. Then after applying lime and correcting the pH, give time for say 10 to 14 days, around 2 weeks. After that, you can add organic manure, preferably processed manures like different forms of compost, at least 5 tons per hectare. Again, give some time to get it decomposed and become part of the soil. Then, as per the rating, soil test based quantities of NPK can be given. Assure sufficient moisture before application of lime, organic manure and fertilizer. Then apply organic manure 15 days after liming. Apply basal dose of fertilizers 10 to 15 days after organic manure application. You know, phosphorus we are applying as basal, N and P basal plus split doses. Magnesium also you can go for basal plus split doses, and in between magnesium and potassium give at least 5 to 7 days interval between those two, and secondary and micronutrients are to be applied only if deficiency is detected in soil testing, and preferably foliar application is preferred in the case of all the micronutrients because they are required in small quantities and you can avoid heavy metal loading and pollution to the soil.